It's NFC South time. A little change in the guard happening in the NFC South right now. Some youth versus some vets to make our all NFC South squad for 2023. Coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson, as always, at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We appreciate all of the everydayers out there, as always. Make sure you are an everydayer. Subscribe up on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of the NFL. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon today to get started. An interesting division here in the South. We talked about how the North and the NFC, Matt, might be one of the worst overall squads. I think both Souths will compete for that honor when we're done doing all division teams, and we only have two left here in the South and the West of the NFC. And it starts with quarterback. Where do we go here? Do we go with a second-year quarterback? Do we go with a number one overall rookie quarterback? Or do we go with a veteran like Derek Carr?
Yeah, and I think that's the theme of the division, as you mentioned, too, is especially on the Bucs and the Saints, teams that have won a lot of games recently. There's quality veterans but are on the back nine, and then this is a rebuilding division. So you're getting an influx of young talent, like the first overall pick in Carolina. It's boring as could be, and I know we just had this conversations of Cousins versus Fields, but at least we've seen Fields. I think I have to go Carr.
I think you absolutely do have to go Carr here, even though I don't love it. I was, if we could have seen a little from Desmond Ridder, Bryce Young could be a fun player. I mean, the Carolina Panthers fully believe in him. They traded all the way up to number one and gave up quite a bit to get him as the quarterback of the future, a playmaker there. And even though it's maybe on the, the boringer side of things, like you mentioned with the NFC South, there's no budding close enough to be a budding superstar, at least with the upside of someone like Justin Fields to go with anybody other than Derek Carr. So we're going Derek Carr here as the quarterback for the NFC South, which brings us to running back in a similar conversation. I think some higher end players here. You've had Alvin Kamara that's been playing at a high level for a very long time. As running backs go, we've seen some injuries creep in there, and he hasn't had as strong of seasons in recent history as he once had in the NFL. And then you have a rookie who projects to be one of the top running backs in the league from jump in Bijan Robinson. I don't know, Rashawn White and Chase Edmonds, Keyshawn Vaughn, whatever they got going on there in Tampa is not going to be on our squad at running back. Miles Sanders, a really good running back with Chuba Hubbard behind him, and Carolina deserves some consideration. But to me, it's a two-horse race. Do you go vet, Alvin Kamara? Do you go rookie, which would be, I believe, the second rookie in our entire series here? We had Dalton Kincaid as tight end of the AFC East. You can go back and listen to all those episodes. Bijan Robinson, the rookie. Do we just plug him in day one in the all-NFC South team?
I think so. I think he's that special. Kamara, if this was 2 years ago, Kamara, I think it's a different conversation. And I don't think Kamara's falling off a cliff by any means. He also has a suspension potentially looming, but we kind of ignore those things for this exercise. I just think that Bijan is way more explosive. And frankly, if he was competing in any division at running back, he would win many of those battles for me. I think he's that good of a prospect.
I mean, yeah, he is a stud prospect. And I mean, I guess we have to consider a possible suspension too, as because we're picking a team for this year. If he's not available, that's not going to help our team very much here. So there we go. Our second 2023 rookie to make a squad, which is Bijan Robinson, running back of the All-NFC South for 2023. About tight end. Tight end's not a great position group here. It's Pitts obviously has the talent. He had a nice rookie year. I think let me see. Let me look again here. So we got Juwan Johnson, Cade Otton in Tampa, Hayden Hurst with the Panthers, and Kyle Pitts. So good players, but I think like 300 or 400 yards was right. But Kyle Pitts had 300 yards last year or something, right? With injuries and so
I need 1,000 as a rookie. I mean, I know he doesn't score, and everyone in the fantasy community hates him. And I'm going to go down with the ship on Pitts. I own him in every fantasy league. I bought in heavy last year. BP, I heard this yesterday that in redraft, if you drafted Kyle Pitts, which was like a 3rd-round pick, there was like a 70 or 80% chance all those teams didn't even make their playoffs. Where if you drafted Kelsey, there was like an 80% chance that your team was in the playoffs. No matter what else you did, if you screwed up everything else, and I drafted Pitts everywhere and had a terrible season. But I'm in on him. I'm going down with the ship. He's a special, special talent.
I had him everywhere too, so I guess we're going to have him here. I mean, he had more yards as a rookie than Hayden Hurst has had the last 2 years combined. So there is that upside, and he has produced in the NFL. So Kyle Pitts, our guy here. We're going youthful after a veteran quarterback in Derek Carr with our playmakers here on offense. We'll talk about the wide receivers. But I think we're going to go 3 wide in this division. But first, Matt, offensive line, and it starts.
Now it gets interesting to me. Like the rest of these positions are interesting. Those first 3 were pretty close to slam dunks.
I think so. This is going to be a pretty good offensive line too. So
it is.
And again, there's some young talent, and there's some guys that have been around a little while. You look at tackle. To me, I don't even know if there's a huge conversation at tackle, just because there's guys like Matthews and Wirfs who continue and have been playing at a really high level. And I don't know if there's anybody that can overtake Jake Matthews, even though he's been around the league for now 10 seasons. He still had a good season last year. He's still a really good player at left tackle. You got Ike Ekwonu, who's the 1st-round rookie last year, a top pick, another 1st-rounder in Trevor Penning. And then on the right side, Tristan Wirfs, who might actually play some left tackle this year. He could play either side for us, but he's been a stud at right tackle. And so I'd probably have to take Tristan Wirfs over Ryan Ramczyk on that side as well.
Yeah, and I'd really like to get Icky on this team. I mean, Moton's a good player. McGarry's a good player. So we got a lot of quality tackles. I mean, maybe I was about to say there's not a stud, but I think Wirfs is a stud. So here's where I'm going to fight you a little bit. And I got no qualms with Matthews. He is a quality starting tackle that is making $18 million a year or whatever, and is worth it. I mean, that's the going rate. But it seems almost like a foregone conclusion that Wirfs is moving to the left, which I would rather he was on the right. But I like Ramczyk at right tackle, Wirfs at left, more than I like Wirfs at right tackle, Matthews at left.
Interesting. You know okay. Even though we haven't seen
I think Wirfs value dips
on the left side yet.
Right. I know.
Right.
I don't love that part.
I like Matthews Wirfs. You like Ramczyk Wirfs. I wish we could just move one of them inside, because I think there's an opportunity for a player inside, although there's some solid interior offensive linemen as well. I'll give this one to you. I was
about to give you this one because I think we're going to have some fights on this
well,
edition.
How about this? No, you know what? I'm going to give it to you. No, I like it.
All right.
I like it.
I'll take it.
I'm going.
I'll keep that in mind later.
Wirfs left tackle, Ryan Ramczyk right tackle here for Team NFC South. Next, Matt, we've got some interior offensive linemen, some wide receivers to talk about and get this squad ready on offense, and then of course the defensive side of the ball, where we have another conversation about some young players versus some veterans, which is the theme of this division, which is really in upheaval and really transitioning in 2023. Next. Today's episode of Peacock Williamson is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Make your way to FanDuel right now, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's $2,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. No better place to bet on all of the action. We got NBA playoffs and NHL playoffs that are now over. Champions have been crowned, but guess what? There are already bets to be made on next season's NBA and NHL seasons. And of course, a ton of bets to be made for the upcoming NFL season. There is win totals for every team. There's already lines for just about every single week of the 2023 NFL season. Rookies of the year, MVPs, coaches of the year, Super Bowl champions in the future of the NFL. Great promotions every day at FanDuel. Safe and secure app. I love the website. So easy to use, so easy to navigate, and build your own parlays as well. So get paid instantly when you win at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get that no sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NFL. So the interior guys, I like Chris Lindstrom at left guard. I don't know if you're going to.
That's a slam dunk.
Okay, good.
Okay,
so,
I hope our listeners know how good he is. Like, he is a top 3 guard in the league right now. Star.
And he was drafted to be that. And there's a little bit of, self-fulfilling prophecy. There's some guards around the league, especially interior offensive linemen. I think an interior defensive lineman, maybe some safeties. There's players that maybe off-ball linebackers. I think those are the positions where it's harder to know the names and harder to know who's really good, who had really good seasons, especially if they've only had one and they're a younger player and they weren't drafted as high. But when you're drafted in the first round, 3 years ago, 4 years ago as a guard, and you play well, everyone knows you. And Chris Lindstrom has been that guy for the Atlanta.
He has been, yeah. So this is more of a puzzle to me. You mind if I want to take over for a second?
Yes,
here,
yeah.
Because I'm looking at this from a lot of different angles. So I think we have to lump centers and guards together in this conversation. So I'm going to skip guard for a second because we have one in ink, in stone. I think center is Ryan Jensen, returning from injury, which you don't love at his age, versus McCoy in New Orleans. However, McCoy also has a guard history. We could avoid the Jensen-McCoy conversation, plug Jensen in at guard or at center, McCoy goes to guard. Or I think if we're just taking pure guards, it's probably Andres Pete, and that's a bit of a weakness. And I think this is cheating, but if we asked Icky to play guard, is that a total cheat move? Because, I mean, people looked at him as a guard or tackle coming out, but he's a left tackle. I mean, we could pretend he could be a guard, but he's a left tackle.
If he would have just played guard last year, or if Wirfs would have played, because remember, Wirfs was that same guy, like, maybe he's not a left tackle. He's going to be a right tackle, but maybe he's a guard. If he'd have played more, guard in the NFL, we could say, okay, let's cheat a little bit, move one of those guys inside. But I think for this exercise, we've got to stay true. And I love the way you broke that down, because otherwise, I would take McCoy and Jensen, and you hope Jensen returns from that injury. I think he did come back last season, though, and play in that playoff game, and not. Maybe not.
I think you might be right. Yeah.
Maybe came back a little bit early. But he thought.
I don't think they're worried about him for this year. Yeah.
So, and so then if you get vintage Ryan Jensen, then I like that, and I like McCoy, and those were the two to look at it at center. So if you have McCoy at guard, I like McCoy better than Cesar Ruiz, Matt Filer. I like him better than Pete, Brady Christensen, Austin Corbett. There's the rookies, Matthew Bergeron, Chandler Zavala, Nick Saldiveri, Cody Mock. Every team has a rookie guard that could be pretty good in this league. We just haven't seen anything from him yet. So give me McCoy, give me Jensen. I like that, man.
Okay. Yeah, I think putting Icky at guard is flat out cheating, but putting McCoy there is not, because he's played it in the league.
Okay, it's time for wide receiver then. And this is going to be fun because there's a lot of good
I got to stand on this one too. I don't know if I'm going to win this battle or not. Okay.
Do you want to start with that, or do you want to go through this a little bit first?
All right, I'll just throw it out there.
Okay, let's hear it.
Now, this sounds blasphemous and crazy, but I think Chris Olave and London are the best 2 receivers in this division right now.
Ooh,
and
okay.
Much like Kyle Pitts, the Atlanta receivers couldn't have been hindered more by especially Mariota, but their quarterback. I mean, there's on Twitter you can find of errant passes of London and especially Pitts wide open that Mariota just misses them. And then in turn, they just decided we're just going to run the ball and not throw it all. But the wide receiver gurus out there, Matt Harmon and those dudes, just rave about London and Olave after one season. But obviously, there's 2 Buccaneers that might have something to say about that. And I can't put Michael Thomas in this conversation. I'm sorry. I just can't trust that guy at all.
There's Michael Thomas. There's Adam Thielen that are really the old heads now in this division.
Right.
And so, and I agree with you. I think it would come down at that point to the two Tampa Bay Bucks. And look, even if you put one of the Bucks in with Olave, then we would be talking about Drake London versus the other Buck, I think, for that third spot anyway. So now, and I'm not going to fight you on that. I like that a lot. And Chris Olave, to me, was the easiest one. I think he's a slam dunk for what he's going to be in this division, projecting him out again to year 2 after he had such a fantastic rookie year. We'll see if it looks better with Derek Carr there in New Orleans. Drake London, a nice season for him. He's a very similar guy to Mike Evans. And, we're not building a roster necessarily to like, okay, who's in the slot? Who does this better? Who does this better? We're just picking the top guys. It's nice if it fits in and you can kind of picture a roster together. But Drake London's kind of the new version of what Mike Evans was, that bigger bodied, outside wide receiver. So now it comes down to then Mike Evans versus Chris Godwin then, Matt, for that third spot. And I think it's got to be Mike Evans.
Okay. I was having a really hard time with that, to be honest with you. And I'm sure plenty of Bucs fans will tell us we make the wrong decision. But as close to a coin flip as there can be. Yeah, I mean, Godwin, I don't know, has been exactly 100% since his injury a little while back.
And that's where I go with it, because Mike Evans didn't have his best season last year. The entire Bucs squad didn't have their best season. It seemed like everybody was injured on offense and defense with that team. But Chris Godwin was not himself when he came back, and so we haven't seen that level yet. So I still trust Mike Evans a little bit more and give him the nod for his season and his career, really, and what we probably could expect from him if Chris Godwin really never gets back to that. And again, at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL on Twitter, drop it in the YouTube comments. Let us know. Did Chris Godwin look like he was the better player by the end of the year last year would be the question.
Yeah, and let's do Evans. I'm absolutely cool with that. But in case people forgot, again, this has some fantasy relevance. Evans was not a quality fantasy starter for like 16 out of 17 weeks. Remember that one week he had like 8 touchdowns and 900 yards or whatever the heck it was? Like kind of skewed things because one week he went bonkers.
I mean, that happens a lot in fantasy.
But that's
you see a player and you're like, it helps you win one week. It doesn't really help you win any weeks the rest of the year.
Right. And he probably was on a bunch of people's bench because they were mad at him.
There's a lot of people mad at what was going on in Tampa Bay last year. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah. But they're good players. I mean, I think both those guys are fine. So let's put Evans in. I'm cool with that.
There we go. I like it. That is the offensive side of the ball in the NFC South. We'll run through it real quick for those of you who forgot who we picked already. Derek Carr is our quarterback in the South. Bijan Robinson, the rookie first rounder. He is RB1 already for the NFC South for our 2023 team. Some projection involved with some of this. We've got Chris Olave and Drake London as our top 2 wide receivers, with Mike Evans as wide receiver 3 to go with Kyle Pitts at tight end. Then left to right offensive line, Jake Matthews, we go on Tristan Wirfs, left tackle. Yeah. I didn't take Jake Matthews out of my lineup yet. Tristan Wirfs, left tackle. We got Chris Lidstrom, left guard. We've got Ryan Jensen, center, Eric McCoy, right guard, and Ryan Ramczyk at right tackle.
Pretty solid. Yeah,
it's a good group. It's a good group. I think it's a better group than I thought it was going to be.
No doubt.
And it's maybe not as exciting as some of the other teams, but I think it's looking better than the other South and probably the NFC North.
The NFC North was disappointing. This one's a little bit of a pleasant surprise.
And there's some really good players to come on the defensive side of the ball, and some good conversations with again, young players versus veterans, which is the theme of this transitional division next. Thanks once again, everybody, for making Peacock and Williamson your first listen every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Shout out to all the everydayers. Make sure you are subscribed up on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. Okay, here we go. Defensive line of the NFC South, Matt. And I think the clear slam dunk here to me is Brian Burns. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm going Brian Burns. And then I think we've got to have some conversations about the tackles and the other end across from Brian Burns in this division.
Agreed. He's in. He's a very, very good player. This isn't ideal to me. I think it's a little bit of a lifetime achievement award. But I think Cam Jordan is my end opposite Burns, although he isn't the twitchiest Von Miller speedball off the edge type. Shaq Barrett crossed my mind as well, but like every Buck almost, he had a down year. I think those are your edges, though. I think it's Burns and Jordan. Any qualms with that?
No, and I wanted to have that conversation because while And look, he's put up some decent sack numbers in his career and was productive again last year. Cam Jordan's just a rock solid player, really good against the run, still playing at that level. He's just one of those guys that's kind of ageless, and you just can plug him in. You know you're going to get quality play from him. And a very different player would be a nice bookend to go with someone like Brian Burns too. But could we slide him inside even?
He can do that, which I know we're not scheming and preparing for, throughout the week. So that brings me to the defensive tackle conversation. Like, deep down, I think the two best defensive tackles in this division are Vita Vea and Derek Brown. But not far off is still Grady Jarrett. And I'm just going to throw Kalijah Cansey's name out there because he's a first-round pick and he's different. But the reason I did that is Jarrett and Cansey are a certain type of speedball, small, leverage, get off the ball type quick guy, where Vea and Brown are like 700 plus pounds of beef in the middle. You know what I mean?
Right. Brian
so if we have Jordan, yeah, I know. I thought about Brisset too, but I just figured Cansey was more valuable than Brisset, but I'm a Brisset fan. But if we go via Vea and Brown, Jordan on 3rd and 8 is kicking inside in some way, shape, or form. You know what I mean?
And Grady Jarrett is sort of the interior version of what Cam Jordan is on the outside. He's still been around for a long time, still playing at a high level. He's your nice 3 technique to go with a nose tackle if you went with Vea and Derek Brown. And I'm going to say something. And again, we'll see if we make some Tampa Bay Buccaneers fans mad. And maybe I make you mad. Is Vita Vea one of the most overrated players in the NFL, Matt? Because I wish he's 350 pounds. I think he should be a better run defender. He's almost just as good of a pass rusher as far as disrupting from a pass rush sense than he is of being that 350 pound. I'm going to take on blocks as well. And
he reminds me more of
I would kind of lean towards Derek Brown, who.
That's interesting you brought that up.
Yeah, that's a really good. Haloti Ngata is an awesome player too, and I'm not saying Vita Vea is a bad player. Everyone kind of gives him so much credit, and I think he doesn't do the 350 pound stuff as well. So if he doesn't, then if it just said on his football card 315 pounds, and he played exactly the same, would people feel the same way about him? Is kind of
I see what you're saying.
I would put it.
So. You certainly don't make me mad by that. I bet a Buck fan or two blood pressure went up a little.
I would just say he's good player, not great player. And I think he gets kind of put into a different group just because of his, massive size and how fun of a player he is in people's minds. And he'll make some eye-popping plays, obviously, being able to move at that size and what he can do. And Derek Brown, I think a lot of people don't realize because his career started slow that he had an awesome year last year.
Awesome.
So I would vote for Derek Brown and Grady Jarrett as my 2 tackles.
Okay, it's funny because you kind of took the words out of my mouth because the thing you weren't going to make me mad about was if we decide Jarrett has to be part of this team, which he has a very, very, very strong case, I was going to say Brown over Vea. So let's do that.
Okay, there we go. We've got Grady Jarrett and Derek Brown on the interior to go with Brian Burns and Cam Jordan on the outside.
It's a little more functional too, especially on passing downs.
Yeah, we're putting together a squad. This defense actually is going to be pretty darn good.
It is going to be pretty good. Yeah,
and I like that group. And if Vea was in there, and if Shaq Barrett was in there instead, I think you'd be okay. And maybe even some other young players that might be stars potentially in that division as well in future seasons of our all division squads. Okay, linebacker.
Some good players off this team too, especially in the secondary. There's some.
Yeah, secondary is awesome, and this is one of the best linebacker groups as far as picking 2 linebackers because a lot of these divisions you're like, okay, there's one really good linebacker, and it's like I'm not sure about the second guy, and we're only picking 2 linebackers in most of these divisions. I think in every division's been 2 linebackers. And I think that's the way it's going to stay. And to me, it's Levante David and Demario Davis.
100%. It's the old guys that have been underappreciated their entire career. Devin White, to me, is very, very, very overrated. I wanted to throw Shaq Thompson's name out there. I think he's a very good player. And Frankie Louvu is a really fun, exciting player, too. But I think it's Demario and Levante. I mean, those guys are stalwarts and much better than people think.
Absolutely. Yep, and I love that group. And it looked like, maybe Devin White would be the guy, but it's still just Levante David is still that player. And there's even some, there's been some talk that Devon White that White could be moved here from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We're just crushing the Buccaneers. We're talking about overrated players, Matt.
I know.
I think we have 3 Bucks though. We did give their other linebacker the nod. We've got Levante David, we've got Mike Evans and Tristan Wirfs so far. Oh, and Jensen at center. So
that's not bad.
We're doing okay. Yeah, we're doing okay for the
Bucks.
I'm
going to fight for one in the secondary too. So.
Oh, okay. Well, let's get to that conversation then, because the secondary is up next, and I was going to say maybe one of the more underrated players in the league is in their secondary. Is it Jamel Dean? Are we on the same wavelength here, Matt?
I think Winfield's in.
Okay, so you're talking about the safety. Okay.
Yeah. I have 10 defensive backs in front of my face here, and figuring out which 5. We'll take 5 defensive backs. Agreed?
Yes. Yep, we will.
Is a little tough for me. So I think you start. It's what we've seen to do through division by division is of the defensive backs, who has to be in? I think Bates has to be in.
Yes.
Okay. I think Terrell has to be in.
He's on my list in ink.
I think Lattimore has to be in.
Oh, okay. So that's where
You're
I was
sure
going
on that
to,
one, huh? Okay.
I was going to maybe surprise some people and pick someone like Jamel Dean over Lattimore and J.C. Horn in Carolina over Lattimore. I think Horn. They had better seasons, and I think they had better projection with the like Lattimore's best season was as a rookie, and I think he's still living off that off that reputation. He hasn't been that guy, and he's been good again, but he's not great. And I think I would take J.C. Horn over him at corner. I think I would take Jamel Dean, who, by the way, just got paid in Tampa, over him at corner. But then if you went, say, A.J. Terrell and J.C. Horn at corner or Lattimore, then Jamel Dean is battling with some of the safeties like Tyrann Mathieu at nickel.
Right.
So do you go to Tyrann Mathieu?
I'm not married to Lattimore.
Those corners?
I'm not married to Lattimore. I am married to Terrell. I'm married to Bates. And then I think we got to hone it down from Lattimore, Dean, Horn. Davis with the Bucs is also a really good corner, but I would take Dean over his teammates. I want Winfield in the secondary. I want the Honey Badger in the secondary. And Jeremy Chinn's a really good player who's a lot different than all these other dudes.
Yeah. So this is going to be a really good secondary, and it's hard to leave some of these guys off. Marcus May is a really good player as well.
I have him in front of me too.
So here's the question. I think this will answer it for us. Do you take as your second safety Antoine Winfield or Tyrann Mathieu? Because then if you take Winfield, then we have to have the conversation at nickel. Is it Tyrann Mathieu? Is it Lattimore? Or is it Jamel Dean? If our first 2 corners are A.J. Terrell and Casey Horn.
Okay, because I was about to agree with you, especially because the nature of this conversation is who do we want for this upcoming year? Not who do we want 2 years ago? Yes. So Horn is in for me too. I am fine with that. So Terrell and Horn are our outside corners.
Okay, I'm putting it in ink. So,
yep.
AJ Terrell, J.C. Horn, Jesse Bates. And you're going to go Antoine Winfield at the other safety spot.
I love Winfield, yeah. So we got to throw the Honey Badger in as our jack of all trades?
So it's either Jamel Dean, Marcus Lattimore, or Honey Badger is our nickel, our third cornerback, our 5th defensive back.
You gave me the nod on our first disagreement. I can't remember where it was. That was the Ramczyk Wirfs conversation.
This is tough. I was hoping you were going to give me this one.
I would vote for Mathieu, but not strongly. They're all good.
I would vote for Jamel Dean.
Okay, I'm cool with that.
And I'm standing on the table for him. And we're projecting and we're going a little bit more youth if we do that. But, I mean, Tyrann Mathieu is such a good player still, too. So that's why I was hoping you would be more convinced about one of those spots. But I'm leaning toward Jamel Dean there as our – and that'll make our Bucs fans that are listening
throw them a bone.
Our squad.
Again, I mean, there's 10 really good defensive backs here, and we're going to leave half of them off. So such is life. I mean, I didn't expect that from this division.
Here's the other thing. If we're just talking about a true nickel, Tyrann Mathieu might fit better in that position. If we're looking at it as, if we're not looking at it as like, who's the 5 best DBs, and he's in that conversation anyway, but who's a nickel, like who's that guy that you want to do everything, then he would be that player. So that's kind of the argument for him over Dean, even though, Dean is maybe an underrated guy.
Honestly, that's how I looked at it when I picked Mathau, a minute or so ago. But then you stood on the table for Dean, and I'm not going to knock you off the table. That's your dude. I'm cool with it. He's a really good player.
All right, let's go. Jamel Dean, he's in.
There you have it. Boom.
All right. So, and a PFF loves Jamel Dean too, by the way. Pro Football Focus. Yeah, he's got some big time grades. In fact, I think Pro Football Focus is going to love our squad here. We've got a lot of really high graded players from PFF on our NFC South team. How do they stack up against the teams in the rest of the NFL and all of the all division teams in this series? There's only one left, Matt, tomorrow. It is the NFC West. Let us know what you think. Who did we leave off that should have been on? Who did we put on that should have been off? At BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL on Twitter. And of course, drop a comment on YouTube, and you can find us everywhere you get your podcasts. Matt and I back tomorrow here.
I bet we get a comment about Vita Vea and Marshawn Lattimore. I'm not.
We're gonna get
those two might just perk up in our mentions.
We will get some comments for sure, and we have from a lot of fans from some teams, and that will, I'm sure, continue tomorrow as well, right here, Peacock and Williamson.